Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this session in our Women of Significance in STEM series, where today I have the pleasure of speaking with Shannon Bumgarner from the USA in North Carolina. And Shannon has a background in chemical engineering and pulp and paper science, and is currently employed as a procurement leader in the manufacturing industry there. So we're going to explore Shannon's background and career and understand a little bit more about the inner workings of how she has created success in male-dominated industries, and explore the passion behind her or the rationale behind her passion for supporting and being a female leader in the STEM. So welcome, Shannon. Now, firstly, did I pronounce your surname correctly?
You did. I'm really impressed, actually. Most people don't get it, so good job.
Fantastic.
I'm so thrilled to be here.
Lovely. I'm so glad that we've been able to connect. So perhaps we'll have about 30 minutes to explore your story. And so if we start with perhaps telling us a little bit about what you do and who you serve, and how you came to be doing your role at the moment.
So my role was a courage and a career pivot for me about 3.5 years ago. I grew up actually in manufacturing. So I've spent roles as a engineering leader in the plant. I've been a quality leader in the plant. And then I've also done production supervision roles as well. So I actually grew up most of my career until the last 7 years when I transferred over to a more corporate role with my current company. The role that I started with in my current company was what we call supplier development. So think of going out and doing quality, if you will, with our supply chain. So it really gave me an opportunity to move from the plant over to a more corporate role. And I never spent really much time in the supply chain area. So it gave me a chance to really broaden my career. And then
and if I can ask you, what inspired you to choose engineering as a degree?
I love math and I love science. Chemistry was by far my favorite class in school. And I really was trying to find a way to marry the two. And I'll be really honest, I actually also wanted a way to be financially independent. And I knew that engineering was a way that I could combine all of those three things into one career path.
That's interesting. I don't often hear the connection between financial gain and science. So this is really interesting to hear you had that vision for yourself from the beginning. And
I'm here in the United States when I went to school, which was way too long ago. We won't talk about that. But chemical engineering was one of the more higher paid engineerings. And then it obviously married with my skill set. So it was just the best of both worlds.
And did you have engineers or science, in your background, in your family, in your upbringing?
I did not. So both of my parents were both incredibly supportive, but I will be honest, when I said it to my mother for the first time, she looked at me like I had actually really lost my mind. But my mother wanted me to be a teacher, but I really had a passion for math and science. And so they were very supportive once I think they got over the initial shock of the career path. And I often say that my dad was my first male ally. Without him, I would not be where I am today.
Yeah, isn't that great when you've got that backing from your father? And so, what sort of work or career did he have?
Well, both of my parents are very what we refer to in the United States as blue collar. Yeah. They both worked in manufacturing, and I think that's where manufacturing really spoke to my heart. Yeah. As a chemical engineer, you have a lot of different paths that you can take. And I actually was highly pursued by folks in more of the technical sales area. But my heart was in manufacturing because it's been such a backbone of the United States and honestly how we've been successful. And it's a backbone of my, my family. And I wanted to be part of that.
Wow. And so Tell us more about your work today.
I lead a team of 10 people. We do centralized buying for a global organization. We're a relatively large $12 billion company. So we do a centralized buying function for that. But I want to tell you a little bit about how I got here. So I had the wonderful opportunity to be in a women's leadership program with my employer that I'm in. And that really encouraged me to career pivot. So I'd spent my whole career in operations with a slight diversion into supplier development. And coming out of that program, I had the opportunity to take a commercial role as a category manager. And what that is essentially you're managing your business for those categories that you own. And I had a senior leader talking about male ally that was willing to take a chance on me, never having that background, to allow me to get a broader skill set as I continue to develop my leadership skills. So I guess two things I wanted to say how important that training was, but then taking that leap.
Yeah.
And then having that senior male ally for me that was willing to say, hey, I know I've watched the work she's done. She does good work, and I'm willing to be a buffer for her as she continues to learn and make mistakes, which you will inevitably do.
And what sorts of topics did they cover in the leadership development? Like, what were the eye-opening ones for you?
This one really sounds obvious, but I think really deliberately building your network. So deliberately searching out and forging a relationship with those women. During that project, during that process, we have an opportunity to lead a project that's outside of our function, that you're interacting with senior leaders. So learn how to build that relationship with senior leaders, learning how to build that advocacy with senior leaders. I think for me, that was the biggest takeaway that I had. But the one that I lead with.
Yeah. How did you do that?
Do what specifically?
To develop that advocacy with those women leaders in that different area of work.
Well, you kind of led me to exactly where I was going. So we walked into that room. It's a story I tell when I do some of my professional speaking engagements. And that is, we walked in the room, there was a yellow so what was really important to me was, how do I show up both with those women leaders? So what can I gain from them? And then what can I give to them in return? I think we had a little bit of a connection issue.
Yeah, just if you could repeat that part. I lost you just when you walked into the room.
Yeah, so we walked into the room, and up at the front of the room was a Post-it note that said, how do you show up today? And I never thought about, and to be that far into my career, it honestly, in the way I tell the story, is it literally was like somebody had punched me in the gut, because I never really thought about how I show up every day to the people around me, to my team, to leaders that are senior to me, that matters. And it matters on how I will progress and how I will be fulfilled in my career.
And so how did you then learn, because it sounds like it was a consciousness, someone brought your attention to something that you hadn't been attended to before. So right. That's step one of awareness. Then what did you do differently, or you know, was there specific learnings around how to show up in order to be able to progress?
I think the next part, and I'm still actioning this, to be honest, because it's not easy, is really understanding what your personal brand, what you want that personal brand to be, because that drives how you're going to show up in any conversation or any context, be it at work or outside of work, and really understanding what you bring to the table, and how you show up and what you do, and building that personal brand. So I've spent a lot of time and continue to spend a lot of time working on my personal brand. Honestly, I have a brand coach that I work with to help me with my personal branding.
So that wasn't covered in the leadership program?
It was, but I found that you really have to dig deep for personal branding. You really have to think about it. And I've gone to the person that's my brand coach, I've gone to her class multiple times, and I learned something every time. If you do a personal brand right, it takes a while.
Yeah, and it's not something that's done in a couple of worksheets, is it? You know, and I guess because that's another term that gets bandied around a lot, and it's not something that is, I see, that is like common language for you know, for typically for technical environments. It's much more often associated with sales and marketing, if you're going to look at where that has come from. And so personal brand, how you show up, how you communicate, how you network, even the idea of networking often to people coming out of technical backgrounds is not something that traditionally was part of our training, although I'm sure that's changing now, much more so with collaborative learning and more online work and team projects. There has been, I'm sure, a lot of development since we were at university.
I probably, but I think you know, when I coach younger women now, I still tell them if I could go back and start my career over, I would be a more deliberate networker. I wouldn't keep my network to just the, you know, the people in my personal association group or in the company that I happen to be employed with at the time. Yeah. I would really be more deliberate about seeking out those relationships, being thoughtful about how I seek them out, as well as, and this really gets back to your question on the class, is continuing to cultivate those relationships. And that's the hard part. You have to build in time. I build in time daily, to be honest, to cultivate at least one relationship that I built, to send a note.
And what does that look like? How do you cultivate a relationship?
It can look like a lot of different things. One, I when I can, I book time on my calendar, so it reminds me, hey, this is a priority, you need to do that. But for me, cultivating a relationship is if you've seen an article that you think that person might be interested in. Like I unfortunately have some people that are looking for jobs right now. As soon as I see a job, like, hey, have you seen this job? It could help you. So I try to find ways to give back to them that I can give back, because I think that's the way to cultivate a relationship. Or you just ask them, you know, how's the job hunt going? How's your new role going? You ask them a very interested question about how they're doing and how you can help them.
Yeah, I'm hearing that you'll reach out first to see how you can help, as opposed to, you know, the other way of telling people, you know, who you are and what you're all about. I mean, that will come later, but you've got to have that connection first.
Yep.
And but clearly you were identified by your organization as a top talent to be selected to do the leadership training. That's correct. And that also gave you exposure. So that's how important it is for organizations to make investments in programs that do serve their people, to enable that development. But so network more strategically. What else would you have done differently, or see is critical in accelerating that career journey?
I would say I've actually spent my development time in my current employer actually focused on what I would call women in the middle, because I think as I mentioned, I work at a large company, and folks that are identified as high potential, we get the opportunities. Yeah. And I think if we're going to move the parity needle, you need to move it both from the people in the middle as well as the people on the high end of the potential.
So what roles would be the people in the middle?
Say that again.
What roles would be people in the middle? Is that people managers, or is it mid-career, what we call individual contributors, so they're not managing others?
Where we've had the biggest challenges in our company, or the company that I work for, is that individual contributor, when they get ready to move that manager role, that's where we're having the attrition level. Yeah. And it can be earlier career, and it also, I think, can be later career. It's when they feel that stuck, that I can't get past the individual contributor level to move to the introductory leader level. So I've really focused in that particular area on how to try to get women past that sticking point. And moving up the leadership chain.
Yeah, there is, and so because if they don't get that, their ambition met to move into management, then you lose them from the company. So you're losing
You
this
do.
high value resource with all that
Yep.
experience.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I started a peer coaching program at my company. And I found it, honestly, I thought that it was going to be about to learn some of the skills that I had learned in my leadership program, as well as skills that resources that we found just out in the public arena. But what really changed for me was watching the connectivity between those women. I'm not saying the topics weren't important, but what I watched was, if you've ever met Margaret Heffernan or seen her on TED Talk, she talks about building a social capital. And you watch the social capital build with those women, and the results have been transformative. We've had at least a 50% promotion rate with the women that participate in these circles. I think not only because what they learn, but more so they have that sense of community and that sense of, oh, maybe I need help with my resume. I'll go reach out. And for me, I'll push people. People say, I'm not sure I want to apply, right? They got to check all those boxes, right, before they apply. And I think there's always that push of stop hesitating, go try it. The worst thing is that somebody says no to you.
Wow, that's a fantastic initiative. So you've started that on top of your role there within the organization. That shows a lot of initiative. And the social capital, because again, it's not a tangible thing, is it? It's a byproduct of what happens when you have like-minded people together who have the desire and the ambition for their personal and professional growth.
And what we really found was that the technical women were often by themselves, right? So I've done a couple of rounds of the circles. The first round was actually focused on women in technical fields, because that is my passion. And honestly, if I'm going to start the program, I'm going to start where my passion is. And it was so amazing. Like, they would be the only one in their work group. And now finally they had a community of 10 to 15 women that they never would have met before. Many of them had never met before.
And so was that within the organization, or are they working in different organizations?
No, it was within the same organization.
Wow, that's amazing. So you've
and to be honest, these relationships, we've had a lot of company changes and they've continued. So we have virtual happy hours that we still talk and chat and see how each other are doing, and how we can help one another if we're having a challenge. So it's also having that free space, that safe space to talk about those challenges that you're having, and getting open, honest, transparent feedback on how you can attack a certain problem that you're having.
And what are the typical challenges that they've experienced, or that you've experienced?
I think one of my biggest challenges is about learning how to be authentic to who you are. And to try, I'm going to use the words of Brene Brown. I'm a huge Brene Brown fan. To not belong. I want to belong. I don't want to fit in. I'm tired of hustling for fitting in. So for me, it's finding your voice, to be able to sit at that table, be authentic to who you are, but use your voice at that table, not about fitting in, but about belonging, both to yourself and to your work group. It's not easy.
No, and it's not a clear distinction, is it? And yet, as women, often we've been socialized to fit in. We've been socialized to serve. And although I'm seeing a common theme in women like yourself, Shannon, who are in technical roles, who are leading, who have ambitions, who have visions, and you're making that vision reality, that many of you have had that paternal supporter as a early, like, you go girl, you've got this. And that's interesting. But yes, it is about finding your voice and carving your lane, and yet and getting yourself heard, but doing it in a way that that serves and connects and communicates.
Yeah, because I grew up from the generation where you were taught on how to lead more like a man versus lead like a woman. I had a very tough experience. You mentioned my dad being my male role model. I actually didn't think chemical engineering was all that odd. So I had done really well in school. I did really well in college. And then I came out and I had an experience in the paper mill where I had a male colleague who liked me personally. But he told me that I didn't belong there. And I did not understand. I was 23 years old and I didn't understand. It hurt terribly. But I made a choice at that point. I don't even know that it was conscious, that I'm going to do this my way. I'm not going to change who I am personally. Because to be honest, I'm a bit more feminine woman. So being in a paper mill, maybe that they didn't understand, but I'm going to do this my way. And that's not an easy, and I think it came from parental support and confidence. And I knew that I always belonged with my family. So I had that true sense of belonging from the beginning. And I've carried that sense of belonging through when sometimes, honestly, I didn't really probably truly belong in that work group or in that particular function.
Yes, and doing it your way, and the belonging, the fitting in versus fitting in, but also having the courage to say that and do that, you know, because there would be people that wouldn't have liked that. You know?
No, and I mean, I'm sure that I was excluded from opportunities. I'm sure. I'm sure that happened. I'd rest assured that happened.
And in terms of your perspective on leading like a man versus leading like a woman, or leading in your authentic way, so how do you define the two differences?
I think what I've come to really believe is that women have some phenomenal leadership traits that we can leverage. And I've really spent a lot of time in parallel with the brain, really understanding what my true values are. And a couple of the three that I would share with you are authenticity. When you meet me and you interact with me, hopefully you feel like you really know me. The second one is courage. I face fear. I mean, we all face fear on a daily basis. It's not being fearless. It's learning to, I call it the other F word. It's learning to get past the other F word of fear. And then the last one is persistence. So, if you go into STEM career, you're likely going to get knocked down quite a few times. And you've got to learn to be resilient and find your people. That's what I call them. Find your people and get back up, right? You're going to have to. And I think those core values and that sense of belonging is what helped me move my career along. Although I'll be honest, I don't think I knew that in that particular moment. But looking back over my career, that's what I feel.
So what drives you, Shannon? Like, what's the driver behind the ambition to push through those barriers, the challenges of simply being in a male-created, male-dominated environment?
That it can be done. My true driver, if I'm really honest, other than my own financial stability, which I think is important, but is to really be that proof that it can be done. I get the greatest pleasure.
You to be the proof. You to be the proof.
You and me to help lift others up to be the proof. I don't want to just be the only. I don't believe in that scarcity theory, if you will. There's an abundance out there for many people like me. So my greatest pleasure is to watch somebody that I've coached get promoted. So it's to prove that I can do it, but also to prove that they can do it.
Yeah, I'm hearing a real, person, like a skill and a value around that collective, the collective leadership, the collective communication. And that is something, as you say, is typically or often associated with being more of a women's trait than a male trait. And so tell us, where to next for you? I reckon you're just warming up. I get this feeling.
I'm just warming up. So where's next for me? I hope to continue to a more senior leadership level in my current company, but my real passion I think I've shared this with you, is I really want to launch my own entrepreneurial company. My plan is to launch my company right now, tentatively named Femspired, by the end of 2020. I want to help
Inspire. Love
them,
it.
as in female,
Yeah.
female, inspired for the inspire.
Yeah.
Because I want to really teach and coach people how to ignite the change within themselves.
Yeah.
And that's really where I want to be. I really want to coach and support and educate other women on how they can change their career, how they can drive change in their work group, and how ultimately they can drive change in their organizations. Because I want to see gender parity in manufacturing, engineering, and information technology by the year 2030. And it's not going to be an easy task. I've worked in an industrial setting my entire career, and it's we're not Apple and we're not Google. Let's put it that way.
No, but it starts with a vision, and I'm hearing a lot of clarity. I'm hearing passion, but I'm hearing that ikigai, the diagram that around you're doing something that the world needs. You're doing something clearly you're really good at, and you're also there were the two others as well, but it pays, right? Because we've got to, if it's not paying you, then we've got to find ways to love what we do, that the world needs it, and that we get paid for it. And and I'm hearing you've got a really big program ahead of you around being a integral leader and role model within the industry, as well as building out your entrepreneurial business, where that will make your skills and coaching and perspective and role modeling available to a greater community than the people that you're within your workplace. And it takes a greater capacity, doesn't it? There's got to be, you've got to want it and be able to see it and be in action about it.
I'm laughing because I didn't see it. My coaching circle actually saw it. I spoke for the first time on stage at the Hydraulic Institute in Canada, at an event for my current employer. Then I spoke locally at my employer for a different event, and I had multiple of them say, "Why are you not pursuing this?" So I'm an accidental entrepreneur. It really took me about a year to fully accept that I can do this and I want to do this. So I say that because I want people to know that sometimes you need that encouragement. You need that somebody to kind of push you and help you turn the light bulb on.
Yeah, and this is where I'm also hearing from you, Shannon, that you are so coachable. You are so open to being led and allowing that in, and you're not sitting there trying to work it out all on your own. You're not one of those siloed women who has to be pleasing upstairs and downstairs, and meanwhile there's none of you left, right? Because I'm hearing a lot of work you're already doing and continuing to do on your journey towards really clarifying and defining and owning your personal brand as a leader, as a woman, as a coach, as an instrument of change. And
because I'm already building the community for my brand, so I've taken a master year speaking class. I talked about the personal brand coach. She's actually helping me with my business brand. And even though I've launched my brand, I'm spending a lot of time right now building a network prior to launching that brand. So even though it doesn't, to your point, doesn't look like, I haven't actually physically launched anything yet, but there's a lot of going on in the background, building that social capital.
There's that engineer, right? It's like if it tease out.
It's in a spreadsheet.
What are these? Yeah. And what did you say?
Sorry? It's in a spreadsheet. Everything goes in a spreadsheet.
It's in a spreadsheet, and there's processes, and and there's a lot of that analytical preparation, because we talk a lot about needing more STEM trained women in leadership, in government, in organizations. And why is that? And what I'm loving as we're sharing here is that you are demonstrating why we need it and what the value proposition is that you bring, in addition to your passion and your personal charisma, which you are just loaded with, Shannon. You have the depth of of how you are approaching problem solving, how you're approaching your launch as an entrepreneur. You're not just throwing out an idea and winging it, right? and hoping that something will stick. No, this is the considered, detailed, comprehensive approach, coupled with the communication skills and connecting and working with others, this idea of collaborative leadership. And
I think it's huge for women. I really do. I think women have to tap into it.
And have you found any challenges with that? I know we've got a couple of minutes to go, but I do hear in some camps that women are not feeling supported by other women, that they come across barriers of working with women. Have you experienced anything like that?
I have, and it is one of the top things that I pet peeve, if you will, because I think it's people that subscribe to the scarcity mindset. I mentioned that earlier, that there's only one or two seats at the table, so why help another woman rise? And I feel like when I help other women rise, that I only get better, and there's only strength in helping them rise. It's not a point of weakness. So it really frustrates me, to be honest. You can probably feel that in my personality. It really frustrates me that when women don't help other women.
Yeah. And again, what I'm also seeing is that you're not letting that stop you. That is one of your energy bars. That's one of the fuels. So that's your gift, Shannon. That's the perspective. And when we change our perspective, we change our reality. And that's where
for every one of those women, there's at least 10 or 20 women that don't. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
your listeners can always reach out to me if they find themselves in that situation. Please, I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I love to connect with others. I love to help other people.
So people do want to connect with you. Yep. So where's the best way to connect with you? To reach out on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn's the best way to connect with me. I'm going to be developing. My personal brand's really out there. That's where I'm going to start my business brand, and then eventually migrate to my own website.
Brilliant. I really look forward to sharing this journey with you, Shannon, and really supporting you as you continue to impact your environment and those who don't know they need you yet.
They'll find me.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing. We do need to create that personal brand and then speak our brand so that others can see who we are and what we stand for. And I want to congratulate you on all you've achieved so far. And,
that's so kind. Thank you.
And acknowledge you as a beacon of light on so many levels, both for corporate and the entrepreneur and the STEM woman who is considering whether corporate or entrepreneur is her path. And here you are doing it both.
Both, that's right.
I love it.
I would just leave you with one thing. It's a Brene Brown thing that I really believe that STEM women need to think about. Have a strong back, a soft front, and a wild heart.
A strong back, a soft heart.
Soft front, so be vulnerable.
Soft front, yes.
And a wild heart, so don't ever stop dreaming and thinking big.
Oh.
It comes from her book, Braving the Wilderness. But it's one of my favorites that she says. So that's what I would leave your audience with. And it's been an incredible pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shannon. And I look forward to continuing our conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us today.